Thank you. Welcome to Senate Education and House Education's Committee of Conference on H.456. 11:33 on Monday, May 9th. We're back from a recess. If you wouldn't mind asking, if it's all right with you, I'll ask Ledge Council just to take us through a new draft. Daphne is printing that up right now. And Mr. Demaray, thanks for joining us again.
Oh, nice to be here. Are you ready now?
Yeah, we're ready to go. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so for the record, Jim Damer, as counsel, we are going through draft 5.1 of the House Conferee's proposal on H.456. Changes are in yellow, beginning on page 5.
Jim, since we don't have it, can you just tell us what it does? Is this along the lines of the same study, basically?
It is the same study. It's been reduced in scope, basically.
Okay.
And there's in preparation now of 47,500.
Okay.
Yeah. And
how has it been reduced? In what regard?
So the way it's been reduced is the consultant was going to look at 2 areas that have been taken off the list. One was on the operation and management of the board, and the other was around board governance policies and bylaws. Those have been taken out, and the stakeholder engagement piece has been taken out entirely. So what you have really is a report, more of a document review type process, not engaging with stakeholders, but looking at what other states do, how they compose their boards, etc., and giving some insight on those practices and best practices without the stakeholder engagement piece yet.
Committee, any questions at this point?
I'd like to understand how we came to this. Would that help?
Sure. We've talked a little bit also offline. Please go ahead.
Okay. Kathleen, Representative James, do you want to explain our process? How we got there?
Sure. I mean, basically, we were looking for something that we felt could be accomplished quickly and within a reasonable budget, so that we could try to find, essentially we were a little bit concerned about the scope of the previous scope of the study and how much that might cost. So we met with a couple of folks this morning and tried to get a handle on what we could do for considerably less money. And in meeting with both the New England Board of Higher Ed, for example, and the Association of Governing Boards, it sounded like what would be realistic would be a pretty robust consultant's report or literature review that takes a look at, number one, at best practices in board governance at higher ed institutions, public higher ed institutions around the region, and that are comparable to UVM and VSC. So taking a look at how other boards do it, particularly with a focus on board composition, faculty, and staff. And then to take a look at how UVM and VSC are doing this. And this would be something that they could accomplish by simply looking at online documents, looking at websites, looking at available paperwork, and coming back with a report that says, here's how UVM and VSC are currently functioning in terms of their board membership and composition. Here's how they currently engage with faculty and staff. They're sitting on committees, they have a faculty senate, blah, blah, blah. So saying what they're currently doing, and then comparing that to best practices in other states. And then I think the most important thing would be that this would include recommendations for next steps. And while we certainly can't dictate this outcome, it's pretty clear that the most important next step would be robust stakeholder engagement. So they would come back with a report. They would recommend that we need to, do X, Y, and Z to move this down the field, basically. And so it puts off the really robust, comprehensive stakeholder engagement phase to sort of a phase 2. So hopefully I've accurately come back with what we're thinking. And Kate, you can correct me if I missed anything.
I think really what it was is to say, maybe what we need to do is stage this conversation. Given our time, let's stage this conversation. Let's just sort of do a review of best practice, review of where we are, give us the reports, make suggestions on what we might want to look at next year. What are the questions that we're going to be wanting to ask, and what should a stakeholder engagement look like? What kind of, just to give us, in other words, to fill in some of the background pieces that we are trying to function with now, on what are best practices around the country and the region that are similar to us, and then let's look at that and then start another process, and we get this report in November, which is time to start to build legislation. Next step.
Maybe. I'm happy. I think what we have talked about now a number of times, and I don't think the Senate position has changed, is although we appreciate the effort put into the study, having checked in with colleagues as well as the two members on this committee, we're not interested in having this examined. We would much rather come back next year and start the process in committees. I think it's safe to say that our final position would be a member from the state college, a non-voting member on the state colleges and board of trustees is where we are at this point. So a couple of things, we could either, if you want to consider that, fine. If you don't, we can end now, recognizing that you guys as well are at the end, for sure. Senator Hooker.
I just want to weigh in on the need to have a voice on the board now, especially for the state college system, in view of their transition. And, to put this off another year or more puts them way down the road in the transitional period. And it seems to me that it would behoove the board to have this perspective from someone who's been working in the system and can see where, let's maybe have conversations on the board about the direction that the transition should be taking. So that is my concern about a study. I mean, if you want to introduce a study later on, it's not, and certainly at the beginning of the budgetary discussion rather than at the end of it, because that's where we are now, to do the study, that's fine. But right now, I think it's imperative, especially for the state college system, to have somebody who can speak from a day-to-day perspective. And that's better.
And I totally hear you on that, and I hear your concern for the faculty, and I share that concern as well. I do know that they are dealing with not only connection with the board, but they have 4 assemblies that they have to pull together. Plus, they don't have CCV, which is also where half of the students are. So they've got some work to do on their own structure. So I would almost say that Vermont State Colleges is almost a worse place to do this, as they have so much that's unsettled right now. Which person would it be? Is it going to be, Johnson, Castleton, Vermont Tech?
We could give them a runway on that. Yeah, please, Senator.
And we did talk to folks at state colleges that represent the faculty and staff. And so the assemblies, which would be an online voting system, it would be easy to incorporate the 4 assemblies. They didn't see any logistical problems. And I agree with Senator Hooker that this is a good time because you want that voice on the board as they're making these decisions on how to structure school. But I understand the difficult position the House is in because you haven't heard all the testimony that we heard. You only have the 3 hours to deal with it. So it makes perfect sense that you want to study because you're like, we're just getting into this. We're hearing concerns from the schools, the administrations. We did go look into it and see why some people do it, why some people don't do it. What's happening in different schools. And the reason I don't think a study will really help, I agree with Senator Hooker. If you want to do a study, the committee next year wants to spend time, do a study, that kind of separate, because I think it kind of just comes to, it's almost an ideological difference. Like you're not going to find the schools that do it aren't following best practices, and the schools that don't are, or something like that. It's like other issues. You either think it's a good idea or you don't. But I understand you want to come to that conclusion after hearing testimony and talking to different folks, and you guys haven't had that opportunity. And that just is what it is, and that's just kind of the way it goes sometimes. But we feel strongly that there's a value in having that on there and hearing testimony. Don't see that a study is worth doing. I mean, we could do that next year and start all over, with I don't know who's going to be there. We can't promise what's going to happen next year, but whoever's in those seats next year could decide whether they want to spend the time taking the test.
You do not see that getting this done before we start would be incredibly valuable to inform us? We don't see that would be a way to get this part addressed. It's possible New England Board of Higher Education could assist us with that, and that would be very.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have studied it, so I
Yeah.
think we've gotten to that point.
And you've got the AFT, you've got the employees and the faculty that are supporting you. You don't have the boards and you don't have the administration.
Well, we have heard from all of the administrations that are opposing it. We've heard from them, we've heard from others, we've heard from people that know board governance well and are opposed to it. So I feel like we have, and I'd also say that the reason we're interested in doing this on the state college side is if you look at our vote in the Senate, that was stronger. And to Senator Hooker's very good point, this is the time as these conversations are happening right now. The other thing related to time is I got a strong message from this pro tem, as I'm sure you guys are getting, that we need to, as we all know, we have 2 other committees of conference in ed, but I'm hoping you can it's up to you, close this one out now and say we didn't get there, or if you want to consider that option, just let us know and we can come back later today.
And you are aware that Vermont State Colleges can create a better connection to the board without legislation, and they're actually working on that.
And
we would encourage them to continue that.
That is
Sure.
an admirable goal, but it still doesn't get a person on the board. And
Right.
that
But
is,
this puts us on the road now to be better informed next year. I know that you're feeling pretty well informed, and I know that we have done the work that we have done that has suggested to us that this needs more review. And so I'm just encouraging you, instead of going, forget it, this is all we want, to go, this at least is a step. This is at least something that could answer some of those questions. It doesn't cost that much. And it starts a conversation so that
No,
when
I
we come
respect
back in
that.
January, we have something to stand on.
I completely respect that, and I completely respect the position you're all in. Having consulted colleagues in this room as well as in the chamber,
Yeah.
we're not going to proceed with a study this year as a Senate. We appreciate the offer,
Yes.
but from our standpoint, we have to take this off of the table at this point, from our standpoint.
I hear you. Okay, I mean, just part of our problem is this is an election year. And there are lots of people that are voting this way for election reasons, not necessarily because they think it's good. And I know this because I've talked to those people. But there's an awareness that it's an election year, I have to vote on this, but it's not necessarily what I think is best. So that's an election year.
I would hope that we could trust people to vote because they think it's the right thing to do. And I would hope that anyone who is elected to the board would be doing it in the best interest of the institution to which they're elected. And here, just to drive home the point again, having someone on that board isn't going to cost anything, and it should, it will, I believe, add to the fullness of the understanding of the institutions.
And this takes us a step so that we're better prepared next year, which you are rejecting. You are rejecting that, correct?
Correct,
You're
yeah.
rejecting that ability to perhaps be better prepared next year.
We're rejecting the study at this point. Thank you.
At this time.
Yeah.
At
Members-
this time. I
Sarah,
don't-
personally.
The members could do their own work. We don't know who's gonna be there. We don't know. So to say that this is the first step, because we can't bind those legislators. So we could do a study and it could be a different chair. And then they could say, we're not even gonna take it up. We don't like that issue. So I don't think it's gonna make a difference. I just don't wanna waste people's time and money to do it. If there's people that are interested, that think they're gonna be on education next year, they can do the study. It's not a lot. And they'll come to their own conclusion whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. So I'm not convinced that it is moving forward, that it is going to help next year. I think the committee will have to do their work with the study or without the study. And they may or may not want to do it because it is kind of an ideological decision. It isn't just like, I don't have enough information, but I can understand the reason that people want to have that more information. That kind of makes sense. But I think that it isn't really helpful. It is giving busy work to folks and spending money that I'm not convinced will move the ball forward. And I think also we can't go on kind of hearsay of what people are saying, why they voted. I don't know if in the House, but in the Senate, we can never impugn why somebody voted for their intentions of voting. You know, that's not allowed, and it's nothing that we would ever make a decision on for sure. You know, they might have other reasons why they would say that to you that also aren't true. So we just have to go with the facts on the ground and not hearsay about why they voted.
Representative James.
Thanks. And, you know, it sounds like we've come to loggerheads. And so I just wanted to quickly get on the record about, I'm really disappointed that it sounds like we might not be able to move forward with the study. And the reason I was excited about the work was that I really believe it would move us forward in a significant way. And I'm disappointed that we would put it off for as much as another year if we come back and, you know, take a look at it starting in January and look at it for the FY24 budget. And the reason is that, you know, if we had placed, you know, 2 members on the board right now, that would be sort of a legislative fiat. You know, that's a legislative decision that would be flying in the face of what right now is pretty significant concern and opposition from both the leadership and the boards of trustees of both of the institutions. And I never like to work that way. You know, when you take the time to develop a thoughtful process with the goal of bringing everybody on board, it might not be as immediate, but you might wind up at a shared and collaborative decision that everybody has buy-in to. And so, you know, the thought that we would do a study now and then engage in a really robust stakeholder engagement process that winds up with thoughtful recommendations that everybody's had a chance to be a part of, that work sounded exciting to me. And so I just wanted to get on the record and say that. And, you know, if I'm back next year and if I'm on House Education, this will be something I'll be excited to take a look at because I think it's positive and collaborative and it has the chance of putting together something that really could be a thoughtful solution that everybody agrees with.
So I guess just to be direct, is 456 dead or are you considering that one non-voting member? Well, it's really on them right now.
We, at this point, are not considering that,
Okay,
and you are not considering
that's accurate.
taking the next step.
So at this point, 456 is not moving forward. Is that accurate?
I'd like to talk with the company.
Absolutely. Would you like to come back? When would you like to come back? Okay. We're meeting on 7 at 3. We're in committee at 1:30. Daphne, what do we have at 1?
We have not received any response from.
Have we received anything on 283 as a committee of conference been set up on the House side?
I have not heard from the manager.
283. They need to set that up so their committee assistant. Does it work? I know you need to go at some point for a little while. You need to step out. What works best for you? later in the day, much later, like 4?
Before we're really down
Back
on
on
the
the
floor.
floor,
Right.
or probably actually sooner than.
Can we do 12:30?
I have a
you
conference
have-
at 12:30.
Can we do 1 o'clock?
Around the floor.
Can we do 12:45?
We're voting on S-130, 100. We're
Yeah.
voting that out at 12:45.
Okay,
12:15.
12:15, like.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
thank
I
you.
would ask that while we're talking, that you will also
Yeah.
discuss this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we will see you at 12:15.
And I think that Kathleen very articulately presented our position more than I have. Okay.
Fair enough.
Before you go, and with regard to Representative James' comments, I'm disappointed as well that we haven't listened to the voices of those people who are the heart of an institution, that are there for the students, that are there to promote the institution. And so that's where I'm coming from.
And because we don't necessarily agree with this plan, does not mean that we don't care about those. We would just
No,
like
I'm
it to
not,
be-
I'm
to
not
be
saying
done.
that. I'm just saying my disappointment comes from that perspective.
Okay, thank you. Daphne, you take us offline and we'll return here at 12:15.